Awesome. Welcome everybody to Q&A with Pharmacist Ben Fuchs. And my name is Becca Dukes. So nice to see so many people from all around the world and so many different time zones joining us here. So hello, Karen and Denise and Mike and John and Janet and Shelby and Michael and Sherry Ann and Kathy and Milan and Nancy and Dr. Judy and another Kathy and Ginny. And oh, we got another page. Oh boy. Glenn and John and Kevin and Jean, and welcome everybody. So excited to have you on with us today. I know it was very short notice, so thank you so much for your flexibility and your time and joining us on Q&A with Pharmacist Ben. My name is Becca Dukes. I am one of the, I don't know what you'd call me, but hey, I'm a distributor with Longevity and I'm proud of it. And I am so excited to be able to host this program every month. And we are just cutting it to the minute, Ben, on this month. But hey, we got it in. And I'm joined with my co-hosts, Heather Bowen and Ruth Ellen Sanchez. If you are on live with us, make sure that you turn that chat option on so that you can see the chat. And Ruth Ellen and Heather are going to be putting some information in the chat. And I just want to welcome you, whether you're with Longevity or a guest of somebody with Longevity. Welcome to Q&A with Pharmacist Ben and Becca. And hello, Kevin. Now, if you are a guest, make sure that you get back with the person that invited you to watch this program if you have any questions whatsoever in regards to getting any products that we offer, or hey, becoming a health coach. So we have an amazing certified holistic health coach course that is going on, that is offered by the Institute of Holistic Health. You can find more information about our certified holistic health coach course at instituteofholistichealth.com. And holistic does have a W in front of it because we look at the body as a whole, like whole, not a hole. Got it? So Institute of Holistic Health. But let's get to today's program, and I just want to welcome one of my good friends and mentors who has taught me so much, and I appreciate him so much for sharing his knowledge with myself and all of us in regards to health. Pharmacist Benjamin Fuchs. Hey, welcome to Q&A with Pharmacist Ben and Becca.
Hi, Becca. So you are a health coach, you're a humanitarian, and you are not just a distributor, an amazing distributor, one of the best. And we can all learn a lot from you and your distribution skills and your promotional skills. You're doing a great job. You really are amazing. And I want to give you props, especially for motivating to do this every month. So thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining. And a special thanks to my friends down under who I see, Karen hi, Karen and Kevin. I love your little background there, Kevin. Kevin's an amazing herbalist. Where to get my screen up? Anyway, I can't see you, Kevin, but I know you're there. And thanks for joining. Oh, there he is. Hi, Kevin. I went down to Australia and New Zealand, I don't know, 7 years ago it's been. Can you believe it's been 7 years? And I had an amazing time, and I was hosted by Karen and Kevin, and I got to see how they run things down there, and you guys are doing a hell of a job too. All right, so today we're going to talk about sugar. Everybody wants to talk about sugar. It seems to me like we've talked so much about sugar in the world of health, in the world of longevity, in the culture writ large. We're always talking about sugar. So it seemed kind of interesting to me that folks wanted me to talk about sugar, but nonetheless, it is a very important subject, and repetition is reinforcement. So let's talk a little bit about this really kind of fascinating substance. The most important thing, the first thing I want to say, I don't know if it's the most important thing, but the first thing I want to say about it is even though we demonize sugar, we need it. Your brain runs almost essentially on it, and the various organs of your body, and specifically the cells at the end of the day, are energized by sugar. Now, it's true they can make sugar from protein, they can make sugar from fat, but the kind of sugar that we get in the drugstore or in the food store is a potent way to get sugar into your body. In fact, the most purified substance in the supermarket is probably sugar, aside from in the pharmacy. And in that way, sugar is like a drug because it's highly, highly purified. When you eat a food, for the most part, you're eating a food that, even if it's a processed food, it's a substance that has lots of different ingredients in it. You see on the ingredient tag. Even if it's an apple, it has a lot of ingredients in it. But sugar is as pure as it gets. It's an essence food. And thus, its incredible, incredible potency and potential dangers, because you're essentially eating a drug. You're essentially ingesting a drug. And it's not just a drug, but it's a drug or a chemical that the body has evolved over millions of years to be able to work with. But it hasn't evolved to work with sugar in the way we ingest sugar. We ingest sugar in massive amounts, relatively massive amounts to what the body needs. Just to keep it in perspective, a good fasting blood sugar, a healthy fasting blood sugar is a teaspoon or less of sugar in your blood. And I'll tell you what I mean by that specifically, but just for now, about a teaspoon of sugar is all you need to run your body. But when you eat, say, a cup of yogurt, you immediately get 40 or 50 teaspoons of sugar. When you eat a bowl of cereal, you get a typical sweetened cereal, you get maybe 15 or 20 or 30 grams of sugar. You drink a soda pop, you get another 30 or 40 grams of sugar. We're ingesting massive amounts of sugar compared to, number one, what the body needs, and number two, what the body's used to from an evolutionary perspective, that is. Our bodies were built and our biochemistry was developed over the course of millions of years, and our biochemistry is a vestige, or it's a descendant. Our bodies are descendants of ancestors who lived a certain way. And we've only really changed the way we live. Human beings have only changed the way they live dramatically over the past maybe 10,000 years, really 5,000 or even 500, especially the last 100, 150 years. For eons, millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years that the human body has been around, sugar was very difficult to obtain. But because every cell in the body at the end of the day runs on sugar, the body evolved to be like a heat-seeking missile for sugar. It's always on the lookout for sugar throughout history up until about 500 years ago or so, in the Middle Ages. The body, we were on this constant hunt for sugar. We couldn't find sugar, and even when we did, it was very, very precious and very rare. From a caveman perspective, a Neolithic or Paleolithic perspective, I should say, sugar was only found in honey and maybe some berries, maybe some fruits if you were lucky, most of the time in the summertime. And because of that, sugar to the body and summer became associated. And because of sugar's a propensity for building things, that's what sugar does, is it triggers, it provides energy for building. We evolved a desire and a drive to find sugar, and much of human history was spent really essentially looking for sugar, probably in addition to protein and fat, but at least partially to sugar. So we have a biochemistry, bottom line is we have a biochemistry that's finely honed for sugar. Problem is, 150 years ago, maybe a little more, 200 years ago, 250 years ago, we developed the technologies to purify sugar, to, in essence, refine it and make it much more readily available. And the history of sugar is incredibly fascinating. The history of sugar in the culture and sugar in society is very fascinating. For example, the slave trade was developed in many ways, largely to purify sugar, to refine sugar. Refining sugar is a very, very dangerous and labor-intensive process. Sugar, in order to extract sugar from the sugar beets and sugarcane plants, super high heat has to be used. And sugar is very sticky and burns, and it's just a really hard business. So first, the New World was actually discovered, or the New World was actually, the purpose of the discovery of the New World was at least partially so that we could have a source of sugar for Europeans. Sugar doesn't really grow in Europe as abundantly as it does in the so-called New World. And when they discovered that it was very easy to grow sugar in the New World, everybody from Europe wanted to come over here. Now, there were other things, of course, also that drove the migration or the development of the New World from Europeans, but sugar played a huge part in it. And the subjugation of Native Americans, they tried to get Native Americans to process the sugar. Native Americans didn't want to do it, and they fought back. And so they killed the Native Americans, and they imported slaves. And the sugar business grew up or developed, partially at least, associated with the economic benefits and the economic interests that were supported by the slave trade, and the subjugation of Native peoples, indigenous peoples, which is an interesting fact about sugar. In any case, about 150 years ago, they figured out how they could really do it, and sugar became not just an indulgence, but it became a staple of our culture. And it's only gotten worse over the course of the last 50, maybe 100 or 50 years or so. So we get a lot of sugar, and the body is not used to it. The problem with sugar is it's very, very high energy. When I was a kid, this maybe isn't such a nice thing to say, but when I was a kid, one of the pranks that kids in my neighborhood, not me, but other kids in the neighborhood used to do is they put sugar in a gas tank. You may have heard of this. Put sugar in a gas tank, you destroy the gas tank, because sugar is very, very hot and sticky. And when it gets hot, it sticks to things. And this is going to become important in terms of biology, this sticking reaction that sugar has. If you ever got a sugar burn, you know it burns hot, it burns sticky. When they have a fire in a granary or in a sugar factory, I should say, and there's also grain also, as it turns out, there's very high concentrations of sugar. So granaries explode sometimes, and sugar factories sometimes explode too. And when they have a fire in a granary or sugar factory, it takes like fire departments from all over the area. It's a 4-alarm or 5-alarm fire because sugar burns super, super hot. I remember reading about a sugar fire in Florida, and they talked about how they had to bring in fire engines and fire departments from all the neighboring towns in order to put this fire out. It was burning so hot. Sugar is very hot, explosive stuff from a chemical perspective, from a molecular perspective. So the body has evolved a system for making sure the sugar levels in the blood stay stable. In fact, it's an emergency when the sugar levels get too high because sugar is so darn explosive. This sugar processing system is represented by the hormone insulin. And the problems with sugar are two sides of one coin. You can think of the sugar problem as being a coin, and it's got two sides to it. One is sugar and the other is insulin. And they both have independent issues, independent health challenges that are associated with disruptions in their metabolism. Sugar metabolism creates a series of health challenges, and insulin metabolism creates a series of health challenges as well. We're going to talk about both of those. So it's all because sugar is very, very explosive stuff, number one. And number two, we love sugar. Our bodies need sugar. So the combination of our bodies needing sugar and us throwing off the sugar balance in the body through modern technology, in combination with our biochemical drive for sugar. We need sugar, so our body has a biochemical drive for sugar. I'll talk about that in a moment. And that in combination with the change in how much sugar we're ingesting through modern technology has created a serious, serious health problem. And I always talk about the triangle of disease. Triangle of disease is 3 points that underlie all chronic degenerative disease. We talk about this a lot. Just did a talk for Karen and Kevin a couple weeks ago on this. These are the 3 points that underlie all chronic degenerative disease, and you got to work on these 3 points if you want to deal with any chronic degenerative disease, whether it's cancer or heart disease or arthritis or bad skin or autoimmunity or whatever. Those 3 points are the digestive system, the blood sugar system, and the thyroid adrenal complex. If you want to do one thing to take care of your digestive or to take care of your health, you could do very few things you could do better than work on your blood sugar system, your insulin system. Probably more, the only thing more fundamental than that is to work on the digestive system. That's probably the most fundamental element to work on, which we talk about all the time. The second most fundamental level is the blood sugar system. So if you want to take care of somebody's health, one of the first things you could do is work on your blood sugar system. And I'll tell you how to do it. It's very, very simple, easy thing to do. So when we eat sugar. This is the biggest problem, probably. When we eat sugar, we feel good. And the body, that good feeling is built in. It's hardwired because, as I say, sugar was not, we need sugar and it wasn't readily available. So one of the body's strategies to make sure that we always go find sugar is it feels good when you ingest it. And by feeling good, I'm talking about your brain, your mood. There are two major neurotransmitters that are increased in responsiveness to sugar. One is called serotonin. There's actually a really interesting book called Potatoes, Not Prozac, which is written by a gal who said if you're depressed, eat potatoes. Or if you want to get off your Prozac or your whatever your antidepressant is, eat potatoes. Why? Because potatoes contain sugar. A potato is really a big lump of sugar, is what a potato is. And that's one of the reasons why we love sugar so much. As it turns out, if we love something, there's probably sugar in it. So potatoes are like America's favorite vegetable, largely because it's a huge chunk of sugar. When we eat a potato or when we eat sugar of any kind, our serotonin goes up and our dopamine goes up. Serotonin is the hormone that's associated with contentment. Dopamine is the hormone that's associated with reward. So the combination of contentment and reward is obviously irresistible. You can eat a substance and your sense of contentment goes up and your sense of reward goes up. This is evolutionarily built into the system to keep us always going for sugar because sugar was not readily available, but it's necessary. I hope you guys can see how this all leads into each other. So when we eat sugar, we feel good. One of the major reasons why we can't stop eating sugar is because we don't feel good. We're using sugar, which is a powerful, powerful biochemical that the human body did not have for eons and evolved systems to basically kill for it. And I'm only slightly exaggerating because animals will actually, when they are rewarded with sugar water, they'll hit a little paddle, rats will hit a little paddle until they die. They'll keep hitting the darn paddle. That it's that serious to them to get a hit of sugar. So we will do anything for sugar based on the fact that we feel good and we get a sense of reward when we eat sugar. The problem is the body does not like a lot of sugar. We may want sugar because it's improving our mood, but to the body, sugar is very explosive. It's a very high energy compound, and there's lots of machinery in the body, biochemical machinery, that's dedicated to controlling that sugar, to keep sugar levels from going high so that the body doesn't end up being like a gasoline tank in somebody's car that just got a bunch of sugar. That's essentially what happens inside the blood. That same stickiness and explosiveness in the gasoline happens inside our blood. So the body has evolved very sophisticated biochemistry for us to handle sugar, which is great. But that biochemistry can be overwhelmed. And it's overwhelmed in a very interesting way. When we eat sugar, the biochemistry kicks in, and this biochemistry is represented by the hormone insulin. So we'll just use the term insulin, but it's a whole bunch of biochemistry that is associated with sugar, but we'll just talk about insulin. So you eat sugar, and the body senses that the blood sugar is high, and that represents a problem because you only need about a teaspoon of sugar. You eat a sugary meal, for example, your blood, you can have double or triple or quadruple the amount of sugar in your blood in a very short amount of time. And so the body senses that, and the insulin senses that, and it pulls the sugar down to calm everything, pulls the sugar out of the blood. It creates a state of low blood sugar when it pulls the sugar out. And of course, that low blood sugar triggers us to go get more sugar. We get more sugar, that biochemistry kicks in, pulls the sugar down. We get more sugar, that biochemistry kicks in, pull the sugar down, we get more sugar, and this happens on and on and on. For decades sometimes, for years, for months. The body has a very interesting way of dealing with things that happen over and over again. It stops listening. When we assault the body over and over again with a substance, eventually the body becomes less responsive to that substance. This is how habituation, intolerances, and addictions develop. Over time, the body stops being responsive to something that it had previously been responsive to if that stimulus is chronic. If it is chronically being attacked with something, eventually the body will downregulate its responsiveness. Its responsiveness will become less sensitive. You will become less sensitive, for example, to sugar if you keep ingesting it. And this bodily balancing system, this insulin-based balancing system, will not work as well over time because the body will say, will down-regulate the response. It's kind of like the body saying, hey, look, this happened this happened an hour ago, this happened 2 hours ago. This has been happening every hour for the last month or year or decades. Eventually we don't need to listen anymore. We're getting bored with the same old story. That's called resistance, and it happens to a lot of different stimuli in the body. There's something called, for example, cortisol resistance, where your body becomes less responsive to stress, cortisol being a stress hormone. You all heard of a condition called insulin resistance. I remember I did a talk for Longevity. I think it was in New Orleans, believe it or not. It was in 2001. I can't even believe that. It would be 22 years ago. And it was on this subject, and nobody had any idea what I was talking about. It was radical news, but we learned about this stuff in pharmacy school, and this is kind of true about a lot of health issues. People who are biochemists or pharmacists or medicinal chemists know about things way before it becomes a big thing in the culture. In 2001, nobody heard of this idea of insulin resistance. Today, we know it's a serious problem. It goes by the name Syndrome X, at least it used to go by the name Syndrome X. These days, they call it metabolic syndrome. And it's associated with every single chronic disease you can name. This metabolic syndrome. Metabolic means chemistry. Metabolism is the sum total of biochemistry in your body. Metabolic syndrome means it's taking place in a lot of different places. Metabolic syndrome is a disease of metabolism. It's a disease of biochemistry. And that biochemistry that's being affected by this disease is the biochemistry of action, the biochemistry of movement, the biochemistry of growth. And we find that when the body becomes less responsive to insulin, secondary to or following chronic assault by sugar, the body goes into a revved up state, as you would expect from elevations in sugar, because sugar, as we talked about earlier, signals growth. It's a summertime substance. It tells the body it's time to move, it's time to grow muscle, it's time to grow tissue. It tells cells it's time to divide. All the biochemistry of growth gets kicked in under conditions of insulin resistance. And that's a problem because in the body, growth has to be controlled. Growth has to be stabilized. That's the very reason why insulin is pulling the sugar out of the blood in the first place. So we find that the biochemistry of the body goes into a revved up state when we become less sensitive to insulin following chronic assault by sugar. I hope this is not too confusing because it's really important. So we become less responsive to insulin. The blood sugar stays high, which creates its own. I'll talk about the problems that creates in a second. But for now, the blood sugar stays high. That tells the body it's time to grow. To compound the problem, for a little bit of time, when the body stops listening to insulin, the pancreas will make more insulin, and the body will kind of override this resistance. Eventually, the body cells become resistant to even that higher amount of insulin. So higher insulin goes out. And then for a short time, the cells become responsive. But as we keep ingesting, the cells will eventually become resistant. Notice this hand stays high. So insulin resistance not only makes the cells not listen to insulin, it also causes insulin levels to be high. So now you have high sugar and high insulin. So I was telling you, it's two sides of a coin. The high insulin and the high sugar both signal growth to the body, because under normal circumstances, insulin would go up when sugar goes up, and that would tell the body that there's enough energy and there's enough resources and there's enough need for growth. So between insulin elevations and sugar elevations, you got the body in a revved up state. That will show up as rapid cell division. Wherever you have polyps, cysts, fibroids, growths, plugs in the follicle and acne, lots of sebum, skin oil. Anytime you have the body in a revved up state, you've got insulin and sugar driving it. The cell division that we're talking about that shows up as fibroids and cysts and any kind of growth. In fact, one of the classic signs of insulin resistance is skin tags. If you see skin tags all of a sudden appear in your 40s or 50s, guaranteed you're going through insulin resistance, or you're beginning insulin resistance. Another place where these cells divide rapidly is in the inside lining of blood vessels. The lining of blood cells inside the lining of blood vessels become revved up. So this can cause problems with the circulatory system. Now, to compound all of these issues with cells dividing rapidly, one more thing. When the body is in a growth mode, when the body thinks it's supposed to be growing because now it's got high blood sugar and high insulin, both of which signal growth. And by the way, athletes and bodybuilders are known for injecting insulin to make their muscles bigger. Unscrupulous farmers will inject their animals with insulin to make them bigger. So insulin is well known as a growth substance. Sugar is well known as a growth substance. You've got the body in a revved up state, whether it's in the blood vessels or whether it's in the skin or whether it's in the female reproductive system or whether it's in the digestive tract, the intestine. It could be anywhere. These polyps and cysts and fibroids and skin tags, etc. In addition, you also have secretion of the body's major growth molecule. Insulin and sugar signal growth. There is a molecule that's responsible for building substances. It's not a signaling, it probably has little signaling properties, but its main role is to actually be substantive, to be solid, to create stuff like bricks, create a house. So you got these insulin, your blood sugar's high, your insulin's high, everything's dividing, everything's revving up, you're growing fibers, you're growing cysts, you got your skin oil, you got skin plugs, you got all of these things happening in response to sugar and insulin. But now you have secretion or upregulation of the synthesis of cholesterol. Cholesterol is a building substance. It doesn't necessarily signal building, it is a building substance. It's a literal brick and mortar substance for building cells. And when the body is in growth mode, when it's in repair mode, when it's in repair mode, it's going to upregulate cholesterol synthesis. Now, think about what's happening here. You've got elevated blood sugar, you got elevated insulin, cells are dividing really rapidly. There's some more things that are happening here, I'll tell you in a sec. Cells are dividing really rapidly. There's all of these growth signals that are happening. Your cholesterol is going up. And the blood vessel is starting to get clogged with cholesterol and fat deposits. Everything's being secreted. You got the body in a revved up system. What follows after this is called cardiovascular disease. The number one killer from a chronic number one killer to everybody around the world is cardiovascular disease. Now, when you have cardiovascular disease, because of all this sugar and insulin stuff that's going on, and your cholesterol is high, the medical model or the medical strategy or the representatives of the medical model will say, oh, your cholesterol is high, that must be the cause of the heart disease. What they're missing is the elevated cholesterol is itself following the sugar and the insulin. Hyperinsulinemia, that's the technical name. Hyper means a lot. Insulin is insulin. Emia means in the blood. Hyperinsulinemia means too much insulin in the blood, elevated insulin. And dysglycemia, messed up blood sugar, are behind the elevated cholesterol that gets blamed for the heart disease. So if you want to lower your cholesterol, take care of your blood sugar and your insulin. Tell you how you do that in a second, but I want to say one thing. I hope that's, you guys are getting a sense of of how problematic this whole insulin blood sugar issue is, but it's even worse. I said earlier, sugar is very explosive stuff, right? Sugar explodes and burns hot in response or in reaction with protein. There's a reaction that happens between the hot sugar and the protein that causes the protein to coagulate, to get sticky, to break down, to deteriorate, basically caramelize. Our proteins caramelize in response to the sugar. This is a whole new issue. I'm not talking about hyperinsulinemia and the revved up growth. I'm talking about the glucose itself, the high glucose itself. This is separate from metabolic syndrome. This reaction between the sugar, which stays elevated because now your body's not listening to insulin anymore, this reaction to sugar, between sugar and protein, is called glycation. Glycation. Glycation is caramelizing of the proteins in the body, especially the very, 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 very tiny blood vessels. Happens, all the proteins in the body will glycate. The collagen will glycate in your skin. It's a cause of accelerated aging of the skin. The collagen in your connective tissue will glycate, causing ruptures and hernias. It's a major way that we deteriorate is glycation. But the most dramatic manifestation of glycation is in the microscopic blood vessels. These are called capillaries. And the microscopic blood vessels and the capillaries, the glycation, the microscopic blood vessels and the capillaries creates issues at the very terminal ends of the body. For example, the fingers, the toes, the eyes, the parts of the body that are most on the outside. And we know that elevated blood sugar and diabetes are linked to amputations of the limbs and the digits and blindness. Number one cause of blindness actually is glycation and diabetes. And the kidneys are especially dependent on microscopic capillaries. So the capillaries in the kidneys are particularly sensitive to glycation, and diabetes is the major cause of kidney disease. And kidney disease is at an epidemic proportion. And the kidneys, you don't even know you have kidney disease until you have like 20% function. I mean, 80% of your kidneys can be messed up and you wouldn't even know it. So we have a major problem with kidney disease, and the only one, it's bad enough just the ones who have, people who have full-blown kidney disease, 15%, 10% function. But there's a lot of people who are operating with sub 100% function of their kidneys, secondary to glycation of the microscopic blood vessels in the kidneys. Kidney is an amazing organ. Now, this is another important point. In addition to the whole issue of glycation, so you got glycation, you got aging, you've got eye problems, eye disease, you've got amputations, you've got neuropathies, by the way. Neuropathies are pain in the areas where you have this glycation. A couple things I want to say real quickly. If you've ever had a hemoglobin A1C test, you've had a glycation test. The hemoglobin A1C test is a glycation test. It's a way they actually will take hemoglobin, which is a protein in your blood, and they'll see how fast it's sugaring or candying. It's glycating. So you got this whole issue with glycation. You've got this issue with insulinemia, hyperinsulinemia. The cells are dividing really rapidly. Here's where it really becomes a fascinating issue for all of us, whether we're dealing with health challenges or not. Diabetes is technically the third leading cause of death. I think it's heart disease, cancer, diabetes. If you factor in the relationship between diabetes and cancer and diabetes and heart disease, diabetes is the #1 leading cause of death because it's largely responsible for cancer, for most cancers, as well as for heart disease. Or at least it plays a very significant role, we'll say. If it's not, it may be literally causal, but at least it plays a very, very, very significant role. It may be the only cause, but at the very least, it plays a very significant role. Here's the issue. People, when they check for their sugar, will have the doctor do what's called a fasting blood sugar test. A fasting blood sugar test will tell you how much sugar you have in your blood when you didn't eat. The marker for a diagnosis as a diabetic is a blood sugar test of 125 milligrams per deciliter. Just remember the number 125. The marker for pre-diabetes, which is another term for syndrome X, metabolic syndrome, hyperinsulinemia. They call that pre-diabetes, is 100 milligrams per deciliter. So over 100, you're considered to have messed up blood sugar, at least pre-diabetes or full-blown diabetes. Under 100, you're supposed to be fine. The problem with this is blood sugar goes up gradually. You lose control of your sugar. Your body becomes dysglycemic way before you're diagnosed as a diabetic or even a pre-diabetic. So if you have any chronic degenerative disease symptoms, any, whatever they are, you have dysglycemia, even if you don't have full-blown diabetes or even pre-diabetes. That's the symptom. Blood glucose tests are not necessary to diagnose. It might be interesting to see how high your blood glucose is, if it's really, really high, but to diagnose you with a health problem, you just need, or to a blood sugar problem, you just need the symptoms. The major symptoms, the dead giveaway symptoms are visceral fat, belly fat, they call it. That's the number one sign. As I said earlier, growths of any kinds are a major sign, and energy issues are also a major sign. Fatigue, lethargy, it could be depression, although depression is obviously can be a psychological issue. But energy issues, belly fat issues, and any problems with growths anywhere. If you're thinking ahead, you know cancer is a growth issue, and if you're thinking that cancer is related to sugar and insulin, you better believe it. Not so much necessarily the sugar per se, but the insulin. The insulin revs things up, as we said earlier, and it's almost can't even think of a possibility of having cells dividing rapidly, whether they're malignant or whether they're benign, and no hyperinsulinemia. I suppose it may be possible. I can't see how that would be possible from a biochemical standpoint. So all of these are much more accurate indicators than a blood glucose test. If you really want a good, accurate test, have them do an insulin test. But they're very expensive, and they very rarely will do insulin, because elevated insulin will tell you if you have a sugar problem. If you have your insulin is high, that will take care of your blood sugar. So a lot of people are getting their blood sugar tested, and they're only testing for blood sugar. And they'll say, oh, your blood sugar is normal. But they're not accounting for the fact that blood sugar is normal because the insulin is elevated. And because the insulin is elevations in insulin create their own set of health challenges, it's important to know what your insulin, as important to know what your insulin is, as well as your blood glucose. Plus, if your insulin's high, you can assume that your blood sugar is not being controlled if your fasting insulin is high. Assume that you got a blood sugar problem. So the best test is going to be an insulin test. Nonetheless, there's no need for a test. You can just go by your symptoms. So there's a lot more to understand about sugar and the problems associated with sugar. But for now, it's enough to understand we eat way more sugar than we should because we're hardwired to look for sugar, to go basically be one-pointed sugar-seeking machines. We feel good when we eat sugar. Our biochemistry becomes positive. We have more energy, at least temporarily, when we eat sugar. The culture is designed to pound us with sugar. They even put salt in food so they can put more sugar in the foods. Remember, sugar is very addicting. Body has developed an ability to just keep eating sugar and sugar and sugar and just downregulate the response. So sugar becomes very, very addicted, and we're not as satisfied with sugar, the same amount of sugar over time. We become habituated to sugar. So there's an incentive for food companies to put sugar in their foods, even if they have to put salt in the food so they can put more sugar in the food. In other words, the salt will take you might not eat the food if it tasted really, really sweet and had a whole bunch of sugar to keep you the same amount of sugar you need to stay addicted. So they'll put salt in it to cut the taste of the sugar to keep you addicted to the food. So there's all kinds of sneaky tricks people do, especially with kids, by the way, who are too young to understand. And it's no accident that the biggest companies in the world are the companies that sell sweetened cereals to children. That's a worldwide phenomena. Children eating sweetened cereals, and the cereals themselves are ridiculously cheap. So basically, they're cardboard. They're just paper. It's the way they make the cereal chips. They're really fascinating and devious process that removes all the nutrients and creates just a little flake of substance. They put a bunch of sugar on that flake and they sell it for $3 or $4 a box, or what, I don't even know what they sell cereal for these days. And it makes a lot of money. So there's a lot of economic interests that are designed and that are improved or benefited by us eating a lot of sugar, on top of the fact that we are designed to eat sugar. We're evolutionarily hardwired to eat sugar, aside from the fact that we feel really good with sugar. And oh, by the way, a lot of us are not feeling good about ourselves in our lives. So we eat sugar to make us feel better about ourselves. And so for all of these reasons, we have a big, and then throw in the health challenges associated with sugar and insulin. For all these reasons, we got big issues with sugar and with insulin. So now what do? How do you wean yourself off? How do you reduce your sugar intake? How do you improve your body's ability to process sugar? Well, the first thing you got to do is you got to wean yourself off of sugar. And there's some couple things that you could do to do this. One of the things you could do to wean yourself off of sugar is to use the ketogenic diet. You get energy from sugar, that's true, but you will also get energy from fat. In fact, you get more energy. Fat is a concentrated form of sugar. You get more energy from fat than you do for sugar. Sugar gives you quick energy. Fat takes a little bit longer, but it's more bang for your buck. And this is the power of the ketogenic diet, which is a low-calorie diet. Low-calorie diet. Calories represent heat. We talked about this before. Calories represent heat. Body doesn't like heat. The reason why sugar is such a problem is because it's so high calorie. And I didn't tell you this, but carbohydrate and sugar are essentially the same thing. They're not exactly the same thing. And there's different kinds of sugars. I'm not going to get into that. But glucose and fructose, which combine to make sucrose, are the main sugars that we eat. Glucose being the simplest of the sugars, fructose being fruit sugar, and sucrose being a combination of glucose and fructose. And they're each kind of interesting on their own, right? But in interest of time, we'll just say sugar equals carbohydrate. The ketogenic diet is a high-fat, low-carbohydrate, low-calorie diet, 1,200 calories a day. So if you're thinking, oh, I can do the ketogenic diet because I can eat French fries and bacon and hamburgers and all these fatty foods, and a lot of people really do think that, that's not what the ketogenic diet's about. Ketogenic diet is a low-calorie diet where most of your calories come from fat. And that's one thing that you can do. We can talk about the ketogenic diet on another episode, but we've talked about this before. So the ketogenic diet is one thing you do. Also, you can give your body slow release sugar with protein. The body will change protein into sugar. There's a process that the body has for turning protein into sugar. And it's a very efficient process, which is why, by the way, some people will eat paleo, a lot of meat, a lot of protein, and they won't lose weight. The body's turning that protein into sugar. So protein can get turned into sugar in a bad way. If you're trying to lose weight and you're eating a lot of protein, it's not going to work, but in a good way, in the sense that eating more protein will give you the energy you would have gotten from sugar in a slow release fashion. So number one, you can get energy from protein. And number two, hypoglycemic low blood sugar states can be relieved, not quickly, but in the long run with a little bit of protein. If, for example, this is one of the things that happens when we're hypoglycemic, if, for example, you wake up in the middle of the night, go back to sleep, chances are pretty good you went through a low blood sugar period. Now, this is one of the things I don't really have time to talk about, but you should know at least a little bit of it. When the blood sugar drops, that's an emergency to the body. So until you get sugar in to pull the blood sugar back up, your body will start secreting emergency chemicals, specifically something called cortisol. Cortisol gives you the shakes. Cortisol is coffee energy. Cortisol energy makes you feel like energized but tired. It's not a good feeling. It's an emergency source of energy. A lot of people, when they are beginning to experience this insulin sensitivity issue, their insulin's kind of creeping up before it's full-blown diabetes, they go through these periods of hypoglycemia and they'll get very, very shaky. They get jittery. That's their cortisol coming out. The way you handle that is you give this person a sugar pill, a glucose pill. So they get a quick amount of sugar and their blood sugar goes up really quickly. and then the cortisol levels will drop. Well, this can happen in the middle of the night. And so sometimes people will wake up in the middle of the night and they can't go back to sleep. Because what happens is your body's doing its biochemical processing while you're sleeping, and you reach a point of low blood sugar. So this cortisol comes out and you sit up in bed, and then you can't go back to sleep until your cortisol goes back down again. So what you could do if you want to, if that happens to you, is you can eat a little bit of protein before you go to bed. Our Fit Shake, for example, have a little scoop of Fit Shake and some water before you go to bed. That will keep your blood sugar levels stable. Because as your biochemistry is proceeding, all the biochemical processes that you do when you're sleeping, you'll have a source of energy from the slow release conversion of protein into sugar. So eating a little bit of protein before you go to bed is a great strategy for folks who have that issue. Along the same lines, first thing in the morning, your blood is concentrated. You've been in bed for 6, 7, 8 hours. You haven't drank water. You've gone to the bathroom once or twice. You're dehydrated in the morning. One of the things that happens when we're dehydrated, and dehydration is a serious health issue because people are tying in their water drinking habits with their thirst. Your biochemistry begins to suffer before you're totally thirsty. By the time you're thirsty, that's a serious thing. But before you're thirsty, your biochemistry is starting to suffer. In any case, when we go to sleep at night, or when we wake up in the morning, our blood is thicker because we're dehydrated. When the blood is thicker, the sugar is more concentrated. When we talk about blood sugar, we're talking about blood sugar concentration. The thicker the blood, the more sugar, the more concentrated the sugar in the blood. So you can lower your blood sugar by drinking water. And this is especially important first thing in the morning. It's also important if you fall off the wagon and eat a bunch of sugar. All that sugar is going into your blood. You could drink water and that'll dilute your sugar. So ketogenic diet is one thing you could do. Of course, eating less calories is another thing you could do. Eating less sugar, of course, is important. Ketogenic diet, water, fiber is also important. Fiber can stick to sugar and pull the sugar out, slow the sugar release and help eliminate it from the body. If you eat vegetables, if you eat fruits, it's much better to do the fruit than it is the fruit juice because you get the fiber. Whenever you're eating a sugary meal, you should try to find some fiber. I talked about my fiber beverage drink, where you just take flax seeds, grind them up, put them in water with a little nutmeg and clove and cinnamon and a little bit of honey or stevia. Makes a great fiber drink. It's great for pre-sugary meals, pre-meals. You'll eat less food, or post-sugary meals if you can do them because it's very filling. It will help trap the sugar if you're eating sugary foods or sweet foods. So more fiber, water, ketogenic diet, eating less sugar. And then there's a ton of other things you could do, by the way. Exercise also, I should say. Exercise pulls sugar out of the blood. And as you're lowering your blood sugar, your insulin is going to become more sensitive. Remember that. So then there are the nutritional supplements we can use, and there's a lot of them. The B vitamins are probably the most important of the vitamins for helping the body process sugar, all of them, but especially B1 and B3. All of them, they work together. But B1 is involved intimately in the sugar metabolizing biochemistry, and same with B3 or niacin. Niacin, interestingly, is not only known as a sugar lowering supplement, and it's an excellent sugar lowering supplement. It's part of something in the body called the glucose tolerance factor, which is actually a molecule that is associated with sugar balance. The glucose tolerance factor helps the body process sugar, potentizes insulin, excuse me, and niacin is part of that complex. So niacin, thiamine, then minerals are very important. Interestingly, by the way, it turns out that all the nutrients that are associated with sugar metabolism are found in high concentration in the sugar plants, in the sugar beet and in the sugar cane especially. Sugar cane and sugar beet are rich sources of all the nutrients you need to process sugar, which is nature and its wisdom. Of course, as I said earlier, we purify the sugar and throw all those nutrients out. And we turn them into molasses, which is one of nature's richest and densest nutrient. It's not really, it's a processed food, I should say. It's not really nature's, but it's one of the most nutrient dense foods you could ever eat is blackstrap molasses, because it's the waste product, the stuff that is in the sugar plant, but they had to purify out to get the sugar. It's another story. So there are minerals that are important for sugar metabolism. Zinc stands out, selenium stands out, and magnesium stand out. And then you could probably throw in sulfur in there as well. Essential fatty acids, particularly omega-3 essential fatty acids, are very important for helping the body process sugar and for potentizing insulin. What am I missing here? There's so many different ones. I forgot about chromium and vanadium. Chromium is actually part of the glucose tolerance factor with niacin. The molecule is called chromium polynicotinate. It's got a piece of niacin and it's got a piece of chromium squished together. There's another nutrient called alpha lipoic acid, which can be helpful. That's part of the sugar processing chemistry. And then there's another food I'm thinking of. There's something else I'm thinking of here. Oh, amino acids. Amino acids are also building substances. So there are certain amino acids that will help the body process sugar and help improve insulin sensitivity. Probably the most important is something called glutamine. Glutamine is actually turned into glucose, and using glutamine as a nutritional supplement, you can help lower your sugar cravings. Likewise, glucosamine. Both glucosamine obviously has glucose right in the name, and glutamine are converted into glucose, and they will both give you slow release sugars. Sometimes people will say that their blood sugar goes up when they do the pig pack because of the glucosamine. That won't really happen unless you've really got messed up blood sugar, but you can use that phenomena for helping the body get a slow release, sustained release form of sugar that can help lower your sugar cravings. There's also an amino, and by the way, you can get glutamine in our Fit Shake product. Glutamine is an amazing amino acid for a lot of reasons, but it's especially high concentration in building proteins like whey. And then there's another amino acid called alanine. Alanine, which is in our Rebound FX, is a precursor to one of the body's most important anti-glycation substances, a substance called carnosine. Carnitine, carnosine. And alanine, the amino acid alanine, which is found in our Rebound, which is a great anti-diabetic or anti-glucose supporting supplement because of those amino acids and the energy electrolytes in the B vitamins. Alanine is found gets converted into carnosine. Another anti-glycating agent is hyaluronic acid, which a lot of people don't know. Hyaluronic acid is also found in our in the bone and joint pack, and also bone broth. Bone broth is a great anti-diabetic food. It's the proteins, highly concentrated proteins are anti-diabetic, and also the hyaluronic acid and the glucosamine. So a bone broth, and I'm sure there's other things I'm missing, but that's a great place for us to stop, I think. So how about if we take some questions? Rebecca, I don't see you there. Where are you?
I'm here. Wow.
Maybe the blood sugar pack. If you want to get somebody off of sugar, let me just say this real quick. I can't see you for some reason there, my dear. Oh, there you are. So the healthy blood sugar pack, the sweeties, but always support the sweeties with number one, the ultimate niacin. I think the ultimate selenium might be in there. Am I right? The ultimate selenium is in there, right?
It not as a product in its own little bottle, but you do have it in the tangy tangerine.
Get the blood sugar pack, support it with the ultimate selenium, support it with the ultimate niacin, and support it with the Fucoid Z. Algae and polysaccharides in general can help support blood sugar stabilization. So that's a nice one. That's a nice little benefit for the Fucoid Z. But it's not as important as the chromium, the vanadium, and the niacin and the selenium. If you want to throw one more thing, you could throw that one in.
So can you interchange the Fucoid Z and the Z radical?
Z radical sugar. It defeats the purpose.
So Fucoid Z. which is many of the benefits of Z
Z
radical without the sugar.
drink.
Say that again.
Z radical is more like a tasty drink. I mean, it's better than other, things that people drink because it's got some nutritional benefit. But if you want just, you want like more bang for your buck nutritionally, go with the Fuchs Z, my opinion.
Or go with both. So unless you're needing to watch your blood sugar, that's for sure. Well, I learned a lot about blood sugar. I don't know about everybody else. I had some comments come to me thinking, wow, this would be an amazing program for the health coach course on blood sugar. So guess what, Ben? We are going to work on including this into the health coach course as part of the continued education.
Okay.
So with or without permission, it's going to be there.
Yeah, send one to me. Are we the recording me?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I want to watch it.
You can get so you're going to be able to get the recording on criticalhealthnews.com because we have all the recordings from our Q&A with Pharmacist Ben, our Ask Doc Live, our Ask Vet Live, our health moment or moments of truth with Pharmacist Ben, and also you have another one that we put on there as well.
I'm doing one with Jaunty this week, I think.
Yeah, you've got one going with Jaunty. So there's a lot of great replays that go over different health lectures, shorts, whatever you want to call them.
We were doing them for a little bit. What happened?
Well, we have more to do. Yes. So
I like if we do like 2-minute thing. These are long. But a lot of people don't sit and listen for an hour. But if we do like little 2-minute pieces, like what was the take home here? Sugar revs things up. We weigh more sugar for evolutionary reasons and economic reasons and the way the culture is designed. And we're trying to fill up a hole. You talked about holes earlier. We have these holes in our body and try to fill them up. So we weigh too much sugar, and elevated sugar burns things, it moves things, it revs things up. It's behind all health challenges. And it's not that hard to lower your blood sugar. It's basically, people always ask on Coast to Coast or when I'm doing my show, how do I handle my diabetes? Not so much my show, but on Coast to Coast, because they're not really nutrition people. How do I do and I think in my head, it's the easiest thing in the world. It's the fact that it's the #1 cause of death, if you factor in cancer and heart disease, is so crazy to me because it's an eating disease. Diabetes is an eating disease, period, a food disease. Now, I'm not presenting myself as a paragon of eating perfection. Okay, I don't want anybody judging me or anybody else about food. It's just from a biochemical standpoint, from a health challenge standpoint, controlling sugar intake and calorie intake in general is such an easy thing that we can do to stay healthy. And if we're having autoimmune disease, it's an easy thing to do. I think not so much us, but I think out in the culture, it's like a cliche about sugar. It's like jargon, it's trite, because you hear about blah, 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 blah. That's what I don't think we think that here in this room, or even people who are like kind of like us. But I think most people think of it like, wah, 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 you know what I'm talking about? Like in like that, like this thing, and it's not. There's these powerful biochemical reasons that mean that we have biochemical power. We have power to control our biochemistry. It's not about, I'm a bad person, I eat sugar, and we're bad people. There's so much of this mental and emotional stuff associated with it. It's that you can lower your blood pressure, you can reduce your cholesterol, you can calm the body down, you can improve cardiovascular symptoms, you can do or heart disease symptoms, congestive heart failure symptoms, all of the things that we can do without drugs, simply by something as simple as caloric restriction or reducing the amount of sugar. So anyway, you want to take a couple questions? Do we have any questions?
Well, it is 8 o'clock, Ben. I know you had somewhere you needed to be. You want to take a couple questions?
Questions, and then we'll wind.
Okay. Well, let's go to Martin. Martin, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, hi. I somehow my picture did not show up, but I hope to make this quick. But Ben, you are the greatest. How do you spell the Z-quel-Z before I go to my question?
Z-quel, you're talking about the
Fucoid Z.
F as in Frank, U as in uncle, C as in cat, O as in Oscar, I as in igloo, D as in David, Z as in zebra. Fucoid Z. It's fucoid.
Thank you.
We should do a talk on fucoid. Fucoid is so mind-blowingly amazing.
Yeah, because I'm a diabetic. I use many of your products. I have a question. My doctor thinks I should be taking injections because of bone loss. I'm going into 77 soon. I know you're not a favor of that, but could you spend a moment and explain to me why?
Go ahead. I apologize.
No, I was just hoping you could explain a little bit about it.
Let me explain that. And I'll try to explain it and not get angry because it just makes me so angry. I can't even tell you how angry it makes me. So I gotta take a deep breath. For those people who care about humanity, it's unconscionable how this can happen. Those drugs are among the most toxic, and this is saying something because a lot of drugs are toxic, but these are among the most toxic drugs that we have. They're called bisphosphonates, these drugs. They're notoriously toxic. And you have to be dosed very carefully and they got to monitor you. It's just horrible. And what they do is they do not grow bone. They do not grow bone. They kill the cells that destroy the bone. See, the body is in this constant building and breaking down, building and breaking down balance. Out with the old, in with the new. You can't put new wine in old vessels, as they say, right? So this turnover process of the body is critical for health. It's how we stay strong and vital. What they do with this drug is they eliminate the turnover. They cut the turnover off at the knees. So you have no longer turnover. Are you with me? Was it Frank? I didn't catch your name.
No, Marty.
Marty. Okay.
I'm with you.
With it. So you have these cells that chew up the bad bone, and you have cells that build the bone. This is the way the body is. So the drug strategy, which is evil, is to kill the osteoclast, the cells that destroy the bone. You don't get better bone. You get bone, but it's old bone. So you get more fractures. Okay. Additionally, you have massively thrown off a major part of the body's biochemical machinery. Massively. It's like the most arrogant, obnoxious thing you could do to this holy, sacred system called the body. So what do? What's the problem? Well, bone deterioration is a sign that the body is in a break. It's breaking down faster than it's building up. It's in the red.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you're in the red, my friend. So the answer is to get you back in the black. So then we have to say, okay, why am I in the red? Well, you're in the red for two reasons, and two reasons only. One is you're not building fast enough. And two is you're breaking down too fast. You with me?
Yes.
You're not building fast enough and you're breaking down too fast. It's two sides. That means you have two places to work. You can, number one, support the building process. And number two, you can de-support or not support or inhibit the breakdown process. Okay?
Okay.
To do that, we got to say, okay, how do I build up? What's causing me to build up? Or what can I do? What's causing my breakdown? Number one cause of your breakdown is going to be, I don't say number one, but one of the things that's going to cause the breakdown is sugar, as we just talked about. The sugar reacts with protein, as we talked about, glycation, and it's happening to the bone, it's happening to the rest of your body, but you're seeing it in the bone. Okay, that's number one. So eliminating the sugar is one of the things that you can do. The second thing is if you have a sedentary lifestyle. The body is in a use it or lose it mode. So if you're sedentary, you're going to shrivel. You're going to break down. You're going to deteriorate. Does that make sense? So you have to signal the body. You have to signal the body you're in a growth mode. You have to tell the body you want to grow. You got to be careful here. You don't want to do it with chemistry. You want to support it with chemistry, but you don't want to tell the body to grow only with chemistry, because then you get that problem with overgrowth, which you don't want either. The best way is with exercise and movement and pressure. Pressure on the bones generates something called piezoelectricity. On my water here. Generates something called piezoelectricity. Piezoelectricity turns on the growth response. So jumping up and down on a rebounder, I don't know if you can do any of this. I can't see you, so I can't tell, but jumping up and down on a rebounder, taking walks. If you can lift weights, that's great. Stretching also generates piezoelectricity. Movement, physical movement. Highly recommended just for everything, especially as you're, look, I'm 62, you're 77. How fast does this go, Marty? Right?
Pretty fast.
Darn fast, right? So 77 becomes 80, and then 80 becomes 85, God willing. So, it goes fast. So get to the movement part now, even if it means going to the gym, whatever it is. I don't know your body condition, but whatever you can do. And then there's the nutrition standpoint, which you're missing. The number one thing you could do is to build collagen. The bones are made of collagen. You've heard of collagen, obviously, right?
Yes.
People think of collagen, they probably think of their skin. But collagen is the major glue. It's the glue that holds everything together. Wherever you have structure, wherever you have support systems in the body, be it the skeletal system or the blood vessel system or the stuff that holds your skin in place, you've got collagen. So building collagen is key. You can't build collagen without vitamin C. So you should be taking high doses of vitamin C. One of the reasons I love the Beyond Tangy Tangerine so much is because it's high dose vitamin C. So go nuts on the Beyond Tangy Tangerine and then throw in anything that builds collagen, like the collagen peptides, the glucogel caps, dietary bone broth, and then minerals like zinc, magnesium, and calcium. Zinc FX, Osteomag, Osteocal. These are the nutrients for building the collagen. So keep in mind, both sides of the equation are important. Laying off the sugar, laying off anything that's pro-inflammatory. I didn't say anything about digestive issues this whole hour, but if anything is leaking into the blood through the digestive system, that's got to be controlled. Anything, glycation, I think I said that already. And then make sure that if you're doing a sedentary lifestyle, that you're moving your body, and then the raw materials that you need to build the body. All of these not only will build your bone, Marty, but they'll also build your blood vessels. They'll also build your skin. They'll also build your intestinal lining. You won't have any toxicity. You won't have to go to the doctor. And you will truly be working on your bones and your skeletal system, not faking it out with a poison drug. And you can record that and pass that on to any healthcare professional who thinks that it's a good idea to prescribe Boniva or any whatever the latest Fosamax.
Yeah, you've got it. This
Yeah.
is excellent. Does Dr. Walk have a book on this? Do you know?
He's got so many books. And by the way, that's a great question, Marty. I don't know if he has a book specifically on this, but let me tell you something. Doc has some great books if you like to read. And that guy is a genius of genius. He's a polymath. He knows he knows anthropology, sociology, pathology, medicine, history. He blends this whole thing together in his writings that is so easy to read and so fascinating. So if you can ever get a chance of reading any of Dr. Wallach's books, I highly recommend Epigenetics, Hell's Kitchen.
But I have some now. I just want to say thanks very much, and hopefully you can expand this into a full hour for one of your sessions.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Marty. Let's do one more, Rebecca. I don't see Rebecca.
All right, let's go to Amy. Amy, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello. So my husband and I are both talking about doing keto, of course, to lower blood sugar and to get off wheat. I just read Wheat Belly, incredible book by William Davis. I'm like, what? I get it. I totally get it. My husband doesn't have a gallbladder. So how does that work? He does take longevity supplements and digestive enzymes. I'm just wanting to kind of.
That's going to be a little tricky. For everybody else, the gallbladder is gall means bile, bladder means bag, and the gallbladder is a bag of bile. It's supposed to hit the fats that enter into the intestine from the stomach. When you eat food, it goes from the stomach to the intestine. You hit with a blast of bile. That's supposed to break up the fats and help you absorb the fatty nutrients. Without a gallbladder, it doesn't happen. You will get a little trickle of bile from the liver, but it's not anywhere near what you need to really maximize your fats. It's imperative that anybody without a gallbladder make absolutely their life's work to get their fatty nutrients into their system. EFAs, fatty vitamins, D, E, A, and K, especially E, A, and K. D you get from the sun, and he should be getting lots of sun exposure. This guy, I hope I don't know where you live, but hopefully you're where you can get some sun, but even a sun lamp would be great for him. And then I can't even begin to say how important essential fatty acids are, except to say it's mind-blowing how it's jaw-dropping. That's another great topic for us to talk about, is essential fatty acids, which he's going to be deficient in. So it's job number one, and also what are called phytonutrients, flavonoids, carotenes, phytosterols. Without a gallbladder, you run risks of deficiencies in all of those. And those can wreak havoc downstream because they're so fundamental. All the things I just said. The phytonutrients in particular are adaptogens. They help the body control stress. So what he can do, he should be making sure he takes supplements with all these with meals, okay? With meals, because he wants some digestive juices going. And then also with precursors and analogs of bile. Precursors of bile are things that help you make bile. And those can have some bile-like effects on their own. And then also stimulants or mimics of bile, analogs of bile. Lecithin is an analog of bile. You'll see lecithin in all dietary supplements should have lecithin in them, and it's in our digestive enzyme. Ultimate Enzymes is like gallbladder in a bottle. It can, and among other things, it has a few other things in there too. But he should be doing Ultimate Enzymes with all his meals. And Ultimate Enzymes are so valuable. Oops. Sorry about that, you guys. Okay, I'm back. The Ultimate Enzymes are so valuable compared to what they cost. It's like ridiculous. Oh, somebody keeps calling me. I should probably turn my phone off. Sorry. Okay. And then also, you might want to consider apple cider vinegar with meals, noni juice with meals. We don't talk about that noni juice too much, do we? It's still around, right?
I know we have the goji juice. I don't know about the noni.
Yeah, no, you really want noni. Aloe vera also, but mainly it's think about fats intake through supplements with meals, and then also the Ultimate Enzymes and bile support.
So the taking the EFAs, which is an essential fatty acid, is actually helpful. It's not like, oh, eating more fat that will,
Yeah, if he doesn't take essential fatty acids, he's missing arguably I don't want to say because there's all these things that are important, but it's one of the. Let me talk about essential fatty acids real quick. Okay, fatty acids are fatty acids. They're fats that have an acid quality, and there's lots of them. Body makes lots of them. Body is constantly making fatty acids, a fundamental part of biochemistry. But there's two essential fatty acids that function as the control points for inflammation and anti-inflammation. They function as control points for the production of inflammatory factors and the control control functions for the production of anti-inflammatory factors. In the body, by the way, we hear a lot about how bad inflammation is. In the body, inflammation triggers healing. Without inflammation, you don't have healing. So you need inflammation to trigger healing. You need both omega-6s and omega-3s. The reason why these EFAs are so important is because they are signaling molecules that are essential. That, in other words, the signaling won't happen unless you have them in the diet or in supplements. You will be missing major regulatory molecules for the control of inflammation and anti-inflammation without essential fatty. Every single study that's ever been done around essential fatty acids, by the way, shows skin problems in response, especially dry skin. How many people out there have dry skin? You don't have to raise your hand because I know all of you. And because that's just the way we are. I'm in the skin business, right? You know what? We sell millions and millions and millions, maybe $100 million a year of moisturizing creams. You guys, I'll bet you have moisturizer in your purse, in your wallet, in your car, in your home, in your office, in your desk, in your school, in your locker. You got them everywhere. Probably the average person probably has 6 different moisturizers, right? Nobody should ever have dry skin anymore with all the moisturizers we're using, right? What happens? Everybody has dry skin. It's a fat issue. If you want to control dry skin, get yourself on EFAs. By the way, I didn't catch your name, ma'am. Amy.
Amy.
What's your husband's name?
Andy.
Let's see.
He's 42.
Dry skin?
Sorry.
Dry skin?
Yeah, he has a lot of skin problems.
Hello.
Mhm.
Acids, EFAs. You want to change his life? It cracks me up sometimes because people think I'm really smart. I'm not that smart. People say, "Oh, thank you. You saved me," and blah blah blah. I didn't do anything. It's that simple. You get them on EFAs, okay, and then that's what it is. It's not complicated, you guys. It's just if you understand just the basics of the body, if you speak the body, and that's what you're all learning here to do, and many of you are already doing it, you can understand how this whole thing happens. EFAs, and by the way, the reason people have their gallbladder taken out for most of the time is because they have gallstones. What is a gallstone? A gallstone is a concentration, a precipitation of blood gook. It's clogged, dirty blood, saturated, super saturated. Kind of like if you take a cup of water and you put salt in it, it goes in, right? And then you put another cup, not a cup, but you take a cup of water, you put a teaspoon of salt in it, and you stir it around, it goes in. Another teaspoon, it goes in. A third teaspoon, it goes in. Then the fourth teaspoon, what happens? It precipitates out. That's what a gallstone is. That's what a kidney stone is. That's what a tear duct stone is. That's what any stone is. Uric acid crystals in the toe for people who have gout. These are precipitants from the blood. How do precipitants get in the blood? Because the blood gets pounded with stuff that shouldn't be there. How does the blood get pounded through stuff that shouldn't be there? Well, your husband wasn't, I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm assuming he's not injecting crack in the back alley or heroin in the back alley. No. So how else does stuff get into the blood? Food. I'm going to guarantee you, your 42-year-old husband, what was his name again?
Andy.
Andy has had digestive issues his whole life. Okay. I am not psychic Ben. I'm pharmacist Ben. All right. But it's like you're a psychic if you understand how this whole thing goes. And God love him, he didn't know. His doctor didn't know. So they take the gallbladder out, and 500,000 of them are taken out. Why? Nobody stops to think why I have stones. Now, once you have a stone, in fairness to Andy as doctor, you're like, get this thing out of my body. You know, you're not going to sit there and practice digestive strategies, but you don't want to get to that point, you know? So obviously he needed to have it done. I'm not saying that he shouldn't have done it because I've seen people, I've never had it, praise God, but you know, I've seen people that have had it and it's all unbelievably god awful. Have you ever seen a kidney stone? Have you ever seen somebody with a kidney stone? Oh my God. Yeah, these are awful. And what they are is that you have the blood precipitating out. You have some stuff in the blood precipitating out. If you can understand plumbing, you can understand your body. Your body is a hemodynamic system. It's fluid dynamics. Sickness is a fluid dynamic issue. The reason sugar is a problem is because it creates blood issues. It causes the blood to become sticky and hot. These are all fluid issues. And when you have stones or gallstones or kidney stone or any kind of stones, you've got a hemodynamic or fluid dynamic system. And so you got to work on the fluid dynamics. Everybody, we should all be working on our fluid dynamics. That's what the body is. All right.
Thank you, Ben.
Amy. All right. Good luck. All right, my dear Rebecca.
Well, Ben, can we do one more on skin?
Yes.
Okay, Sherry Ann. And you should be able to unmute.
Okay.
We hear you.
Okay,
Sure.
wonderful.
Sherry Ann.
Thanks, Becca. And thanks, Ben. It's been a wonderful call. My sister was recently diagnosed with something called, if I say it right, brachioradial pruritus.
It's pruritus, P-R-U. Okay, I
Yeah.
love that. Great. Okay. So that sounds like you can't even pronounce it. What the heck does that mean, right? Brachioradial.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just Latin. Brachioradial refers to the extremities, and pruritus refers to itching. She's got itching on her arms and legs. Okay.
Yes.
Did I sum it up? So instead of saying you have on your arms and legs, she's got brachioradial pruritus. And there's a reason for it, you know, it's cute, but don't be bamboozled by Latin. You think your doctor speaks Latin? You don't speak Latin. When I was filling prescriptions, they were in Latin. You know, they want you to think that they're like the wizard with the pointy head and the mortar and pestle writing sig uno dua bis uno diem, you know, like holy, the holy thing. That's how we look at our doctors. They're like holy. You know, they used to have priests, now we got doctors. All right, that's a whole nother story. So brachioradial pruritus is itching on our arms and legs. All right, so what causes itching? So we're going to work backwards. By the way, all the stuff we're doing is like forensics, scene of the crime. This is like CSI for the body. You know, we're scene of the crime. The crime is the itchiness, or the perpetrator's the itchiness, or the crime is the itchiness, however you want to look at it. We got to find our clues. What causes itchiness? Allergic chemicals. Itchiness is a sign, before I tell you that. What kind of topicals do they give for itchiness? If you got itchiness, where do you go to the drugstore? Or if you get a prescription, what category of creams do you get for itchiness? Anybody know?
I can only think of calamine or Caladryl or something like that.
I hear Rebecca saying it.
Cortisone.
Cortisone, right? That's what you got. You go to the drugstore.
Yeah.
Cortisone. What is cortisone? It's a steroid. What are steroids? And if you get a prescription, they give you fancy cortisone. They call it Lidex or triamcinolone or something. He's probably been on something like that. All right. So Chemlog, I don't even know what they call them anymore. They're all these names. They're all steroids. Steroids suppress the immune system. So, Sherry Ann, if you're giving you something that suppresses the immune system for relief, what does that tell you the cause is?
Something in your immune system.
Bingo. Bingo. She has an immune response. An immune response is a defensive response. Remember, we're working backwards here. Okay. I don't want to just tell you what to do. I want you to see this. Okay. We're working backwards. So you got an immune response. The immune response is a defensive response. So Sherry Ann, if you have a defensive response that you want to stop, what do?
You want to strengthen the immune system.
No, I want you to work backwards with me here. You have a defensive response. What is that? What's required to have a defensive response? What causes a defensive response? I'll give you a clue.
Offending.
In football, you got two sides. You like football? You got two sides.
Yeah, the offense.
Ah, the offense. You got a defensive response. You have an offense. You can't have a defensive response unless you have an offense. Or you see me working here. Okay. So
Yes.
now we got brachioradioperitis, but really it's a defensive response, which means there's an offending agent. With me? So now, if we want to stop a defensive response caused by an offending agent, what's the first thing we got to do? Watch
Figure
it
out what
now.
that offending agent is.
Oh, it's not that hard. It's gone. Obviously, you got a defensive response. There's an offending agent. We want to end the defensive response. Let's figure out what the offending agent is. Okay. Now, when we say it's not over yet, but you see what's working here. Now you got some power over this brachioradioperitis mystery, right? So now, you've got an offending agent. Okay. When we have an offending agent, that means something is activating the defensive response. That means something is getting into the body, right? Now, whenever we talk about getting into the body, this is a rule of thumb for all you guys who are interested in this kind of stuff, presumably all of you. When we say into the body, we don't mean into the tissue, into the skin. We mean into the blood. Into the body means into the blood. That's a rule, okay? Forgot to mention that, but that I'm pointing that out because now I'm going to clarify it. So we have a defensive response, clear. That means we must have an offending agent, clear. We want to end the defensive response. We got to find out what the offending agent is. When we talk about offending agents, we're not talking about into the skin, we're talking about into the blood. So something is getting into this woman's blood. This is your sister, you said, right?
Yes.
Something's getting into, what's her name?
Terry.
Something's getting into Terry's blood. Okay, now let's see. Blood is in here. How do things get into the blood? Well, is she off in the back alley injecting things in through her skin? Probably not. Well, it turns out, has she had a doctor put something legal into her blood? That's one way. If a doctor's injecting legal things that everybody wants you to inject, or you can't travel, can't go to countries, if you know what I'm talking about, that can happen. That's a side effect, because now you've got stuff in the blood. And by the way, anything that happens when stuff gets into the blood will happen if you have a reaction to something that's injected, which is why you want to be on death's door before you inject things into your blood. Sometimes you may need it. You don't just want to do it because everybody's doing it, or you're going to lose your job, or they make you do it. You don't want to. This is the sacred space. The life of the body is in the blood. This is the sacred holy space. You don't inject things, but she's not injecting. So where's the other way things get into her blood? Let's think. How can things get into her blood? What is the way that things are designed to get into the blood? What is one way that specifically things get into the blood 4 times a day, 5 times a day?
Through what she eats.
Hello, it's not because I'm Mr. Food Guy I'm saying this. I'm working backwards. We're doing forensics. You see what I'm saying? I am not Mr.
Yeah.
Food Guy. I am not David Avocado Wolf. You got to eat your avocados and have 5 vegetables and organic. That's not me. I'm just telling Sherry Ann and Terry, your sister, God love her, that she has a way of controlling this. I guarantee you 100%, if she stops eating for 2 days, guess what's going to happen to her brachioradial pruritus? It'll start to resolve. It'll start to resolve itself. In fact, does she notice it flares up? Does she notice her pruritus flares up?
She hasn't been able to figure out to pinpoint anything yet.
Notice it flares. You know what I mean by flare?
Yes.
Does she notice that it flares, it gets worse? Because sometimes it
She's noticed. Yeah, she's noticed that, but she just hasn't been able to connect.
hang on. Does she notice that it spikes?
Yes.
Remember, we're doing forensics here. And you're just as logical as
Right.
I'm not any smarter than you. We're just being logical here. If it flares up, and now we have our model of things getting into the blood, right? And causing a defensive response. If it flares up, using our model, logic only, what is that telling us?
That she's just consumed the wrong thing.
Bingo. Bingo, real time. She now has real-time data. Flare-ups are always your best friend, you guys. And make no mistake about it, not just for brachioradial pruritus, I'm not even saying that right, brachioradial pruritus, but for any pain issues, anything that flares, that's your best friend. If you get flare-ups in your back or pain or arthritis pain or joint pain or flare-ups in your skin problems, flare-ups in your eczema, flare-ups in your brachioradial pruritus, flare-ups in anything, that's real-time data because all issues are defensive issues. All our chronic health issues are defensive issues. There's a great metaphor there. We're in this defensive posture. Our bodies have been hypersensitized. All of our health challenges represent, even though we talk about sugar, even when we talk about the digestive system, even when we talk about stress, all the things we talk about, at the end of the day, at the cell level, at the level where the problem's happening, it's a defensive response and an offending agent. All health challenges. That eliminates the need right there for any kind of medical intervention for any chronic long-term challenge, including brachioradial pruritus. And she can also use, the problem with brachioradial pruritus is it's not topical. So you can't really get much topical relief. It's coming from inside. You know what I'm saying? So cortisone cream isn't going to help this woman. And they can give her anesthetics that'll numb it maybe. And I don't know if she's tried things like lidocaine or anything like that, but you know, that's the best that they can do. Okay.
Thank
Work
you.
on digestive health. I don't think I even told you the story. Work on digestive health. Do a food diary. Note a link,
Okay.
writing down when she flares, or she writes everything down, write down where you flare. She'll be, oh my God, every time I have that oat milk, I flare up. Oh my God, I didn't know bananas. Every time I have bananas, I flare up. You know, that's why writing is really, really important. And then patching up the leaky gut. It's a leaky gut issue. That's how things get into the blood. I forgot to mention that. It's all leaky gut. You all heard the term leaky gut? Everybody has it. You got a chronic health challenge, you don't need to be tested for it. You got leaky gut. Just by virtue of our forensics, right? It's not my assertion. You guys, is that cool? It's not my assertion. I want you to understand it just logically so you can take it and pass it on and tell your customer. Clients, nobody has any idea of this stuff. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry Ann. Okay, do you have time for one more? So I have a text message that came in and John has a question. He says, how can I tell if I have enough stomach acid to break down and absorb the minerals and other nutrients? Is there a reliable test?
Well, the best thing they do, they can drop a capsule down your throat and they can actually measure it. It's called a Heidelberg capsule test. That's the gold standard, a little radio detection capsule. And that's the best way to do it, to know for sure. What you can do is there's a couple things actually. If you do bicarbonate, a quarter sodium bicarb baking soda, and do like a quarter tablespoon water, on an empty stomach, you should burp within like 3 minutes or so. As the acid hits the stomach, as the acid hits the alkaline. If you don't burp at all, that's not a sure thing, but that's an indicator. There's also the betaine test. By the way, betaine, HCl, is in the ultimate enzymes. That's a source of hydrochloric acid plus something else. The betaine is also good for other things too, but it's a source of hydrochloric acid. Or you can get hydrochloric acid drops from the pharmacy. Doctor can write a prescription, and you can do drops of it in water with your meals. And if you feel uncomfortable, you can do it on an empty stomach, actually. Let me take that back. Do it on an empty stomach. And if you feel uncomfortable after 1 or 2 drops, or maybe 3 drops in a glass of water, you're good. You got enough acid. But if you don't even notice it, chances are you've got achlorhydria or hypochlorhydria. If you have any digestive problems downstream, especially gas, bloating, a condition called SIBO, the chances are pretty good you've got a hydrochloric acid issue, and you can just treat yourself as if you do. The worst thing that'll happen if you do hydrochloric acid drops, or you do apple cider vinegar, which is a mild form, or noni juice we talked about earlier. These are ways to stimulate acid. The worst thing that can happen if you use these strategies and you're not hypochlorhydric, meaning low stomach acid, you'll notice a little burning sensation. It won't feel comfortable. And then you'll know you can either back off your HCl, whatever source you're using, betaine or apple cider vinegar, whatever it is, or HCl drops. Then you can just back off of it. So you can kind of diagnose yourself, and you can know just where you're at. So the best test, if you really want to know for sure, is the Heidelberg test. You can try the baking soda test. That's a good rough indicator. But you can also just give yourself acid anyway. You can't, if you do too much, or if you're taking too much, you're already making it, and you put more in there, it'll feel uncomfortable. Then just back off. Does that make sense? Can't hear you, but.
Another part to this question is if H. pylori is present, is that going to affect your stomach acid?
One of H. pylori's mechanisms of action is to slow up stomach acid production. H. pylori can reduce the production of stomach acid, and H. pylori is very common. It's in the body anyway, but it's not supposed to be in the stomach or the digestive tract. There is an H. pylori test you can take where you drink a drink of something called urea, and then the H. pylori breaks up the urea, releases carbon dioxide, and that's a test you can do. You can also do a stool test for H. pylori, but again, I don't know if that's necessarily going to tell you if you have H. pylori in your stomach. Probably the best way to do an H. pylori test, if you want to do an H. pylori test, is the urea drink. Urea gets broken down by an enzyme that H. pylori makes, and it releases carbon dioxide, and they measure the carbon dioxide.
All right, perfect. And one more thing. Okay, so if somebody's on a blood thinner, what is the recommended max amount of EFAs they should be taking?
There's no maximum on EFAs. They're essential. And the more blood thinner you are, so that's an interesting one. If you're on a blood thinner, your body's got a serious problem. Why? Because we just said earlier, the blood is the sacred space. So the body controls the blood like its life depended on it, which it does. Because think about it, if you're on the everything is about the African savannah. That's where our bodies grew up. You're in the African savannah, you get eaten by a lion, right? If you don't clot the blood, what's going to happen? You're going to bleed all over the African savannah. You're going to be dead. So the body has evolved a system for thickening up the blood. That thickening of the blood response happens when there's an emergency. Blood thickening is one of the ways the body deals with emergencies, because the only emergency really that the body had on the African savannah was getting eaten by a lion. That was maybe not the only, but it was the major, or getting hit in the head with something. So bleeding was a major emergency to the body. The body developed that way, so it developed systems for thickening the blood. Today, our body is in 24/7 emergency. Sugar is just one thing that tells the body that there's an emergency. Remember how dangerous sugar is. The processed food, the credit card bills, the lousy relationship, the nutrient deficiencies, the digestive, blah, 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 blah. By the time you're on a blood thinner, your body is majorly stressed out. By the way, what's the first thing they give you if you have surgery in the hospital? After you come out of surgery? Heparin, blood thinner. Because in surgery, your body's been through a major, major stress. Your body doesn't know it's not being eaten by a lion. It's in the 21st century operating room. It thinks it's dying. So it clots the blood, but we're all in this condition all the time. And by the time you need Eliquis, your body has been through the ringer. No babies are on Eliquis unless they're super, super sick. Eliquis for old people or for people who just came out of surgery or people who have horrible diseases. It's because the body's under duress. What EFAs do is they rebalance everything. So when I hear that question, it's like, how much nutrition can I take, or how much nutrition can I take before it affects my poison? You should be working on lowering your Eliquis dose and taking the EFAs. The EFAs are going to keep your body alive. The Eliquis will allow your body to thrive. The Eliquis is just going to keep you alive, barely. Eliquis will eventually, by thinning the blood, you've got to override a serious chemistry. The way Eliquis works, by the way, is that the blood thinning, let me just take a quick digression. The blood thickening and blood thinning is so serious to the body, you can't thicken it appropriately, it can't thin it appropriately. This is made, remember I said it's a fluid dynamic system. It's a hemodynamic system. It all depends on the fluids. Fluids are very tightly regulated. And the control point for thickening or thinning the blood is about 20 different steps. Do you ever see, what a Rube Goldberg machine is? Rebecca, never heard of a Rube Goldberg? Rube Goldberg, you just never heard the name. You ever play the game Mousetrap?
Oh yeah.
Right? Where this turns into this and the ball drops and the slide goes and then the thing spins and it drops another ball and the mouse catches it and all these things happen and then the trap drops, right? That's called a Rube Goldberg machine. Anybody out there know of any old folks out there? I'm the only old folk? Okay, all right. That's called a Rube Goldberg machine, technically. And you know what I'm talking about. You've seen these things, right? That's how the body works, basically. And the enzyme, the thickening and thinning process of the blood is a Rube Goldberg machine. What Eliquis does is it shoots down one of the parts, stopping the whole thing from happening. That's how drugs work. They block things from happening. Eliquis works by shooting down one of the enzymes that's involved, one of the chemicals that's involved in this Rube Goldberg machine. But now you've destroyed the body's ability to thicken and thin. You've thrown off the body's major homeostatic or control point for keeping the body alive. And this is why blood thinning drugs are so darn toxic. Now, Eliquis isn't as bad as the old ones. They used to give you warfarin, which was real. It was so terrible. You had to have your blood checked every 3 months to make sure your thickening time, prothrombin time, and all this stuff was measured. Eliquis is a little bit better because it's specific. It just targets one specific enzyme. Nonetheless, you got a blood thickening problem, you got a health problem. And aside from all the things you should be doing, especially the toxins that are getting in through the blood, through the leaky gut that we just talked about, there's a zillion things you should be doing to keep the blood thin. EFAs control all that. So you need more EFAs. The reason he's asking this question is because EFAs, the omega-3 part of EFAs, can thin the blood. That's a good thing. If you're thickening your blood, if your blood is not thick enough, is too thick, it's not going to be able to distribute its nutrients or oxygen or detoxify. If your blood is too thin, it's not going to be able to clot. It's not going to be able to start the healing process. Every time you have a little cut inside your body or a little rip somewhere or some kind of damage, the inflammatory process is not going to happen. You've thrown all that off with the Eliquis. The EFAs can help restore that. So take as much as you want. What you want to do is tell your doctor what you're doing, because he's dosing you with the Eliquis and the EFAs may have an effect. So you let your doctor know what you're doing. Hey, I'm helping out. So now we can lower the dose of the Eliquis. You follow? So take as much as you want, tell the doctor what you're doing, and you'll be able to lower the dose of the Eliquis. Who knows? You may even be able to get off the Eliquis. I don't know what your situation is, but you'll at least be able to support the Eliquis, not to mention improve your mental health, cognitive health, improve your skin health, improve your cardiovascular health, your heart health, I should say, improve bone strength, all these other benefits. Eliquis isn't giving you any of those benefits. All right.
In response to that, Ben, there's some people that have been put on a blood thinner because of risk of stroke as a response to things that are being injected into the body.
Yes, that happens. Don't inject blood. Yeah.
Right. Well, if the injection has already happened.
Yeah. It's a little tougher. Chelation's the best. Well, here are a couple things. First of all, take care of what you can control. Watch your sugar intake, exercise, breathe, meditate, get on the Healthy Start Pack. All of the things, caloric restriction, chelating agents, all the things you should do anyway to stay healthy. And chelating agents is really the best way to clean the blood, by the way. Any kind of chelate, vitamin C, N-acetylcysteine, MSM sulfur, ultimate selenium, these are all chelating agents. So you want to magnetically pull things out of the blood. And once the problem with this thing, so insidious, is it works at the genetic level. So it's in there, you've now modified your genes. Just take care of yourself. It becomes extra important to take care of yourself and use chelating agents. And as far as blood clots go, blood thinners like essential fatty acids, like vitamin E. Oh, bonus, like glucogel. Did you know glucogel is a blood thinner? Also, there's one more, and I totally forgot what I was going to say. Oh, Fucoid Z is a blood thinner. So there's lots of things you could do to help thin the blood to improve circulation, to prevent strokes. For our gentleman with Eliquis, or woman, whoever that was asking about Eliquis, these are all ways that represent potential strategies for you to be able to reduce your dose of your Eliquis.
All right. Thank you so
Always work when it comes to heart and strokes and blood thinners and all this. Always work with your doctor. You don't have to do what your doctor says. It's your body. You do what you want, but you want to. It's not fair for him not to be participating in your health progress if you've enlisted him to help you. And I don't ever want to be a healthcare professional who tells somebody what to do, not to listen to their doctor, because he's working with you. You don't have to do what they say you do. You get to choose, but he should be involved, or she. They should be involved in the process, because it's only fair. Okay? Always involve your physician.
Absolutely. Now, is there validity to a blood type diet?
If you had everything going perfectly and everything in your life was perfect and you want to just fine tune that last little fine tuning, maybe, but everybody, just go by how you feel. Just go by how you feel. There's no animals in the wild don't eat right for their type. Lions, you don't see lions. Oh, I'm a type O. I'm not going to eat the zebra. I can only eat hippopotamuses. I don't know, whatever. Animals don't eat right for their type. So, that being said, there are some blood types that seem to respond to certain things differently. But for most of us, we're so deficient in, the basics. It's like worrying about a mosquito flying around your head when you have an elephant on your roof. If you got an elephant on your roof, don't worry about the mosquito. You get rid of the elephant, and then you can kind of fine tune everything. So most of us are so darn deficient. Our digestive problems are so severe. Our blood sugar is all messed up. Eat right for your type. You can fine tune once you're all perfect, in my opinion.
Perfect analogy. Thank you so much, Pharmacist Ben. What an incredible hour and 45 minutes.
My goodness. So, and Rebecca, tell everybody how they can they talk to whoever brought them, if there's guests. I don't know if there's guests here.
Yep, absolutely. So if you are here as a guest, make sure that you get back with the person that invited you and thank them for the information that you have received before or today, because this is empowering, folks. We do not have to be slaves or victims. We have the ability to be empowered and take control of our own health. So get back with the person that invited you to this program or watch this video, whether you're live or the replay, does not matter. Get back with them. And for those that are watching the replay and you found us on your own, or you're here because of our newsletter through the Critical Health News or Ask Doc Live, you can do a reply back to that invitation of this program, or the email that gives you the replay link to this program. And one of our certified holistic health coaches will get back with you and help you figure out exactly what you need to have an empowered and healthier life. I mean, it's all about choosing our health journey, right, Ben? We get to choose.
Your own health authority. That's what I
We are our own health authority. That's right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us here on Q&A with Pharmacist Ben Fuchs and Becca. We appreciate you all for taking the time and investing in your own health and taking and using this knowledge to benefit your communities. Don't keep it to yourself. Spread it, share it,
Thank you.
and, you know, be a light, because there's so many people that are just floundering, looking for options. And you now have information that you can share. So
bet.
again, go back to criticalhealthnews.com. You will find the replay of this program later in the week. Feel free to share it, but make sure you let them know to get back with you if they have any questions. So everybody, bye for now. And thank you to my co-hosts, Heather and Ruth Ellen Sanchez, and for all of you on with us. And I just appreciate you. I love the fact that we are able to have a non-adverse meeting with a lot of great people that are just sponges to information that they can use to help themselves and others. Bye for now.